Welcome back, one and all, to another day here at the Daily Report. I'm John Iadarola, and whoo boy, is there a lot going on with the budget and just terrible people doing terrible things. But you know what? We're gonna have some fun with it. We're not gonna look away. We're not gonna shy away. We're not gonna bury our head in the sand as appealing as that might seem, as warm as that would probably be. There might be cool animals down there or something. We're not gonna do this yet. Maybe in 6 months, but I'm not ready to quit just yet. So we're gonna keep going. We're gonna be launching into a discussion of some of the most consequential budget cuts that are either coming or already here. Some of them will be doing damage and making your life more inconvenient, more complicated. Some are already having an effect, potentially a lethal effect. So we'll be talking about that, as well as a nice possible fat contract coming Elon Musk's way. That'll be great and not at all corrupt. But sarcasm aside, we will be turning to, in the middle part of this first hour, a little bit of optimism. I do think that there are some figures out there that are giving me a bit of hope. Maybe they'll give you some hope. If you've been watching the show for a while, you could probably already guess who I'm talking about, but we will be talking about them and then jumping into a whole lot more stuff as well. We'll even be talking about animals. We have a little bit of animal news. We're gonna talk about them while we still can, before they're all dead. Okay, and that's the first hour. Coming up in the aftermath, more fun. Harvard standing strong against Donald Trump despite all of the insane threats against them. And we're gonna be diving into the experience of an independent journalist who went not really undercover, sort of quasi undercover for a year on conservative dating apps and went on dozens of dates with far right men and has come back to report on what the hell is going on with them. And it's fascinating. So we'll have that. And I think we're gonna be ending the show with Bill Burr talking about capitalism, the robber barons, a lot of fun there as well. So with all that said, before we jump into our first story, I remembered our members hangout is happening after the show today. Tier 3 members hangout. Hope to see all of you here. I have not done a good job of promoting it, but it's the third week of the month, and that is when we always do it, Thursdays, a half an hour after the aftermath. So I hope that you're all there. Feel free to become a tier 3 member if you'd like to participate in that. And with all that said, why don't we jump into our first story? Donald Trump and Elon Musk's chainsaw budget cuts aren't just bad for the country, they might actually kill you. And I wish that that was her hyperbole, but I don't think it is, because Donald Trump refuses to learn his lesson, or any lesson. But there's a specific lesson that he will never learn, and it has to do with public health. Because after he lost the election in 2020, which is a thing that happened no matter how much he cries about it, largely due to his horrible surrender in the face of COVID, he's again doing the same thing. He's just letting diseases run rampant across America, and our ability, to the limited extent that they even want to try to stop them, is massively hampered because of the budget cuts that we've already experienced. So the CDC has already admitted that they are struggling to fight these spreading measles outbreaks after the deep funding and staff cuts that we've already seen. And so at this point, 4 months into the year, measles cases are over double last year's count. And that's serious, and you should do something to prevent it, but that's obviously not gonna happen. We've got RFK Jr., forget about that. But once it starts to spread, maybe fight back against it, but that's hard to do when you've like entirely crippled the ability of these organizations to do anything. The CDC's lead on its measles team, David Sugarman, said, "We're scrapping to find the resources and personnel needed to provide support to Texas and other jurisdictions." The agency has, of course, already been devastated by brutal cuts to CDC staff and funding, including a clawback of more than $11 billion in public health funds that largely went to state health departments, sort of the first responders for these sorts of outbreaks. And again, this isn't like some blue state that's getting hit by this. This is Texas. People have already died. 2 kids have already died. More probably will at this point. And this is year 1 of Donald Trump and RFK Jr. and Elon Musk being in charge of this stuff. Imagine what these outbreaks will look like next year and the year after that and the year after that. And so it's already bad, but it's getting worse. How? Because we've already got a little bit of a preview of some more cuts that will be coming, specifically slashing HHS funding by $40 billion amidst all of the, not just the measles outbreaks, but the the triumvirate of different respiratory infections that hit us every fall. They're doing massive cuts even in the face of all of that. And so this internal budget document revealing these proposed cuts has now been made available. That cut, by the way, is more than a third of all of that agency's funding will be gone. We are already struggling to deal with these outbreaks, and they want to cut the funding by a third on top of all of that. And that's going to further hamper our ability to do anything about it. And they're not even going to pretend soon. They're not even going to, they're going to tell you, go to a church, pray on it or whatever. That's all they're going to be able to afford to do, because dealing with these outbreaks is actually expensive. David Sugarman noted that the response to measles outbreaks does cost a lot. Quote, the estimates are that each measles case can be $30,000 to $50,000 for public health response work, and that adds up quite quickly. The costs go to various responses, including the on-the-ground response teams, vaccine doses, vaccination clinics, case reporting, contact tracing, mitigation plans, infection prevention, data systems, and other technical assistance to state health departments. So if you go through what we already have by that sort of calculation, we have 673 documented cases, okay, documented. That's just in the Texas outbreak and the other small outbreaks that we've seen in the country. There's 712 cases as of April 10th. That's almost certainly out of date. We're a week later. There's probably 100 or 200 more. That's double the number that we saw in 2024. $50,000 times those 712 cases would be $35.5 million. That's how much the response costs for our health agencies. That's not the cost of these outbreaks. You know, when you have people having to quarantine, when you have families shut down, when you have them having to pay to care for it, when you have the incalculable, and I would say let's not even try to calculate cost of the kids who died from this. It costs a whole hell of a lot. And I would wager to say far more than will be saved by having our government no longer equipped to actually protect us from these things. And at the end of the day, isn't that like the one thing that conservatives used to at least admit the government should be able to do? Like, it shouldn't be getting involved in things, it shouldn't be doing regulations, but like it should protect us, I guess. Not from this. Not if it's killing kids. Like, imagine if we found out that like a MS-13 had killed 2 of these kids. How much would they spend to protect us from that? Literally, they would spend hundreds of billions of dollars to protect us from that. But if it's needless deaths that, you know, vaccines could have probably stopped, and the future ones that will come would have stopped. Nothing. They're gonna advocate for you to make decisions that imperil your own life and the life of your families. They're gonna advocate, they're gonna elevate people who tell you to put your shields down, to surrender. And they're gonna do that same thing for the government. And so let's talk about some of the other effects that will come from this cut, not just for measles. Public health initiatives aimed at HIV/AIDS prevention would no longer exist thanks to this. Major parts of the National Institutes of Health would be abolished. The Food and Drug Administration would cease routine inspections at food facilities, meaning that companies will now be even more reckless than they already are. And you're gonna have even more need to claw back massive amounts of food once it's found out that it's got some sort of infection, it's got whatever. That's gonna make a bunch of people sick. Funding for many of the administration's priorities are on the chopping block, including federal programs focused on autism, chronic disease, drug abuse, and mental health. Now, that can't be the case. RFK Jr. is so serious about doing something about autism. I know that because he's been talking a lot about it. He gave a speech that I would describe as not well received, where he described people with autism as never being able to write a poem, never having a kiss, never being able to use the toilet by themselves. And I just think it's strange that a guy who has not stopped talking about autism for like 2 decades, he has no idea what people with autism are capable of, what sorts of lives that they live. He seems purely interested in it only to demonize vaccines. It's not that he cares so much about people with autism that he's willing to demonize vaccines, that his brain was broken so he can't understand vaccination. He doesn't seem to care about the people at all. Has he had a 5-minute conversation with a single person with autism? It doesn't seem like it at this point, but whatever. I guess his big study that's gonna blow the roof off this thing come September, probably not gonna be able to afford that, again, thanks to these cuts. And so a little bit more, several prominent elements of CDC would be abolished as part of the overall squeeze on its resources, including nearly the entire prevention and public health fund, funding for the agency's Ending the HIV Epidemic Initiative and its domestic HIV/AIDS prevention and surveillance activities, and its National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. Again, RFK Jr. never stops talking about chronic disease. I guess it's just gonna be him. It's just gonna be him going on Rogan or whatever, and that is gonna be the sum total of the federal government's response to chronic disease. And look, I know that we've thrown a lot of different programs out there, a lot of different acronyms and everything. It's probably difficult for you to know exactly what to think of all of this as like a strategy. What does this say about like the Trump administration's goals? And I think that we can summarize it as make America healthy again. As long as words don't mean the way we, what we'd normally think of them to mean. And so just absolute madness. We are all, every day, we are less safe. We are less likely to be healthy than we were the day before because of the choices being made by Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and RFK Jr. Let's move on to another little cut that they're doing. This one getting us one step closer to corruption. Obviously one of the main focuses of TDR. Let's jump into this. Donald Trump and Elon Musk have apparently identified yet another way to nickel and dime the American people in their quest to root out waste, fraud, and abuse, while weirdly always making decisions that benefit wealthy, moneyed interests. Weird that. So Musk, a couple of months ago, back in February, he had confused people a little bit when he announced that he had deleted the group at the IRS that had brought us direct file. So direct file is a thing that would allow you to easily and for no cost file your taxes rather than doing what most people have had to do their entire life, which is pay a company to do a thing that you're mandated by law to do. Paying $100, $150, $200, depending on how complex your taxes are, to TurboTax or Intuit or whatever, one of those companies or whatever. So finally, the federal government, despite all the lobbying those companies had done, started to produce this direct file program. And then Elon Musk swoops in and says, no, I deleted it. Now, what makes that even more darkly hilarious is that before he announced that, Elon Musk himself had said the federal government should provide an option for people to file their taxes for free. Then I guess somebody responded to him on Twitter. They actually already do that. That's the thing they're doing. And he almost immediately announced that he was killing that program, which is a weird way to respond to that. Now, the thing is, we were confused by that because it didn't seem as if direct file was immediately killed. It still worked through the end of the tax season. So I don't know, maybe it was one of the many things that Elon Musk and Doggy has done that they just roll back or forget about because he was gonna work on killing direct file, but then he saw like a cryptocurrency influencer that he just had to impregnate or whatever. And maybe it slipped his mind or whatever. Not so much apparently. So the Trump administration's plans to eliminate it apparently are still ongoing. And apparently 2 people familiar with the decision said that its future became clear when IRS staff assigned to the program were told in mid-March to stop working on its development for the 2026 tax filing season. Okay, now I just want to be very clear about this. He is going to announce that this, as we will describe, utterly corrupt act, purely designed to benefit corporate interests, is going to be to your benefit because then we won't have to pay for direct file. They've already developed it. It's been ongoing for years. There is a big sunk cost, but there's a benefit too. All the programming, the gradual rollout, like initially only like 12 states had it, then it's being half the country. We're getting closer to everybody having that free option, which we all deserve. No, they're gonna kill it. All of the money that was spent will be utterly wasted, but you'll save money because now you'll have to pay TurboTax $100 to $200 every single year for the rest of your life. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. If only my mom had used a C-section, then my brain would be bigger or whatever, according to Elon Musk at the very least. So let's jump now into the corruption angle of this. I think we can all see that this is a boneheaded thing to do, but it's worse than boneheaded. It's worse than incompetent. The IRS has faced intense blowback to direct file from private tax preparation companies that have made billions from charging people to use their software and have spent millions lobbying Congress. The average American typically spends, again, as I've been saying, about $140 preparing returns each year. And this really reminds me of like the car dealers, where this is like an entire industry that only really exists because laws have been made that allow it to exist. Like Ford could sell you the car through their website or whatever, but they're not allowed to because states have passed laws mandating that they have to use intermediaries. Interestingly, Elon Musk himself has advocated for those laws to be killed because in that case, it would benefit him because Tesla wants to sell direct to consumers. There's no reason why you should have to go through a private company to do something that you'll get locked up if you don't do, except that the law allows it to exist. And now policy is stopping the alternative from actually existing. So let's jump a little bit more into this. The specific companies. Intuit, that's the business software company behind TurboTax as well as QuickBooks. They joined other major companies in corporate America in, oh, what do you know, donating to Trump's inauguration. Intuit gave $1 million, quote, as part of our decades-long commitment to bipartisan advocacy. Now, look, is that an insult? In many ways, yes. But it's also kind of true, philosophically. They will pay the Republicans or the Democrats to make it so that you still have to pay them to do your taxes. They honestly are bipartisan in that. They don't care if it's Donald Trump or Joe Biden, so long as they make it so you have to use one of these services. Now, of course, Joe Biden, to be fair, didn't kill direct file. He allowed it to continue development and got closer to a full implementation. But Donald Trump is helping to kill it. And like I said, it is growing. Last year, the IRS accepted over 140,000 returns filed by taxpayers using direct file in the 12 states where it had been made available. It was expanded to include half the country this year. And so it could massively expand. And it's not even to say that everybody would use it. Some people might have really complex returns that require the more in-depth whatever that Intuit provides or TurboTax provides. That option would always be available. Direct file isn't mandating that you use that. And if this private company produces a superior product with great customer service and great features and great advertising, then they can win. But why is it that we don't get the option? Why is there no public option yet again when we could potentially, many of us at the very least, could benefit from it? It's as simple as the donations. That's what it is. Now, Elon Musk, so far as I know, he isn't individually financially benefiting from this like many of the other decisions that he's making. But a lot of people are going to benefit to the tune of literally billions of dollars. And this is a sort of petty corruption that is just so emblematic of this era of the Trump presidency, screwing over literally millions of taxpayers, millions of Trump voters who would have loved a simple free alternative. Instead, no, Intuit's got to get paid. Okay, with that said, we're now fully into corruption. Let's talk even more corruption, starting with this.
Will he secure any new government contracts while he is working on Doge?
No, not if there's a conflict. If there's no conflict, I guess what difference does it make? But we won't let him do anything having to do with the conflict.
Are you personally checking to make sure there's no conflicts of interest?
Yeah, I am.
He answers to you.
Sure, he does.
Okay, another great question by Caitlin Collins and another pack of massive fat lies from Donald Trump. He's personally checking to make sure, oh yeah, he's looking over the shoulder of the little doggy twinks, making sure that they're not putting any illicit code into it. Donald Trump's like, I wanna make sure that Elon Musk isn't robbing the taxpayer. Hell no. Now that's an obvious lie. Nobody believed that. Jesse Waters doesn't even pretend to believe that. But the first part was a lie too. He's already gotten massive contracts, multiple massive contracts while presiding over Doggy. And we've got potentially the biggest one yet for you. That's gonna make 500 armored cyber trucks or whatever seem like nothing. That's an appetizer of corruption. And so forget all of what Donald Trump has said. Here's the news you need to know. Musk's SpaceX is the front runner to build Trump's Golden Dome missile shield, which is going to be both expensive and boy, is that name stupid. Of course, it's a stupid Golden Dome. But forget that, let's focus on the corruption. Reuters reports that SpaceX, along with software maker Palantir and drone builder Anduril, have emerged as the front runners to build the Golden Dome missile shield that has been widely criticized by defense experts as a costly and unnecessary proposal. Now, they are wrong about that. It is not unnecessary. Well, it's unnecessary to protect America. It's not unnecessary if what you'd like to do is transfer maybe $100 to $200 billion over to people closely affiliated with the Trump administration. Then it's very necessary, actually. You defense experts, you haven't thought of the corruption. Think of the corruption. And so they're pitching a plan, these three companies, to build and launch 400 to more than 1,000 satellites circling the globe to sense missiles and track their movement, and to also build, quote, a separate fleet of 200 attack satellites armed with missiles or lasers that would then bring enemy missiles down. Now, look, I know what some of you who maybe think a lot about topics of war and space and all that are thinking, hey, aren't there like multiple international treaties about how you're not supposed to weaponize space, and specifically you're not supposed to weaponize satellites, and the idea of us blowing up a whole bunch of people, maybe a whole bunch of satellites in space could make future space launches really, really damaging, might actually ground us permanently on Earth. I know that you're thinking all those things because I'm thinking those same things. I guess that counts for as little as everything else these days, as little as the Supreme Court counts, as little as the Constitution counts. They're not worried about that. They're not thinking about that. But they did actually find a way, while we're on the topic of corruption, to make it even more corrupt. Because it's one thing to charge the US taxpayer 100 billion, 200 billion, maybe 300 billion over the next decade to build this entire thing. But then that's all the money. That's no good. That's not how the tech industry works. How does the tech industry work these days? You don't get to buy anything. All you do is you rent it month to month. And that's how this is gonna work, actually. The plan includes one highly unusual clause that would give Pentagon officials pause. SpaceX is pitching that its missile dome system should be a subscription service in which the government would pay for access to it, which means the United States would not actually own the infrastructure being put in place. Well, that's fascinating and terrible. So you're saying we're gonna pay for this entire thing, hundreds of billions of dollars. I mean, instead, we could have public college for free. Every American could have access to it. We could help a generation to purchase their first home. Screw that, that's boring. What could we do? Let's see, we could help subsidize health insurance to make it less out of reach for many Americans. We could finally do something about climate change. No, screw all that. We needs missiles in low orbit. And after we build it, we don't even own it. He owns it. It's his. Okay, well, not just his. It's Elon Musk. It's Peter Thiel, the head of Palantir. It's Palmer Luckey, who set up Anduril. All these are people very closely tied to Donald Trump. They've either in the past donated to his campaigns, or Elon Musk literally bought him wholesale in 2020. Those guys will own a fleet of weaponized missile and laser satellites that they control and we don't. That they control the code of, by the way. What do you think the subscription service is for? They're the ones who are gonna ultimately control it. We're gonna pay for them to have their sci-fi fleet in orbit. I'm not allowed, thanks to the language filters on this, to say what I really wanna say. I will say screw that, but that's what they wanna do. This would be a contract that would make every past contract, weapons contracts, defense contracts, look like nothing, not only for the massive initial investment up front, but then going off into the future, it will be a cash cow until the end of days. And meanwhile, it will continue to increase the power and influence that those tech CEOs have. In the same way that Starlink has allowed Elon Musk to influence the war in Ukraine, now he'll have actual weapons. Okay, and by the way, with the relationships that he has with Russia, do we really want him being in control of our missile defense? I'm not at all comfortable with that. I don't think most Americans would be, but that's the plan. And also, let's say that we get this. Okay, well then at the very least, hey, we have weaponized satellites, and I'm sure that will be it. Once we put hundreds of missile-armed satellites in orbit, that'll be that. Russia won't do that. China, they're not gonna respond to that. They'll just bow down. Oh, America, you're so strong, you're so tough. You can have weapons in orbit, and we won't do the same thing. They won't put hundreds or 1,000 there. We won't end up having satellites blowing up satellites and fill our atmosphere with space debris, making it impossible for us to ever launch a satellite again. These people are not only utterly corrupt to their core, corrupt more than anything else, they're stupid, 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 so short-sighted. They care only about their own wealth, their own power, their own influence over Donald Trump, over foreign conflicts, and they don't care at all about the fact that they might be dooming us, not just financially, but literally dooming the future of our species, our ability to ever leave this planet. God damn, are we hampered and held back every day by the dumbest, most corrupt people on the face of the earth. Anyway, this is the sort of story, by the way, that probably not a lot of people are gonna be talking about. And I'm very worried about that. Anyway, we have a lot of other news, equally worrying, theoretically. We're gonna take a break. We'll be back with more after this. Okay, one and all, let's see what's going on out there. By the way, those of you who are hearing this social break, by definition, you're not listening to the podcast. But if you do, if you enjoy our podcast, feel free to leave a review. You could write it out. I'm gonna read some of those on our second break if we get any new ones. And by the way, let me know what you think of the idea of us making the aftermath available as like a daily bonus podcast episode. We've kept it exclusive to our other platforms a really long time. It's not something, by the way, that's in the works, just an idea I've had. I'm curious what you guys think about that. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I totally respect people who do so. I like the idea. Let me know what you guys think about that. Anyway, let's see. LP Revolt Dragon says, hey John, if you're gonna color your hair, you should do Florence pink. Would look great, and you could screw Trump's evil hate against transgenders with this one cool hair color style. Florence pink. Are you talking about, is that about when Florence Pugh dyed her hair? I'm not sure. That was my immediate assumption. I don't know if that's actually who you mean, but pink. It would really bother right-wingers if I were to dye my hair pink. I'm not necessarily against, I mean, I did purple last year. It's not even that different. Okay, well, we will consider that. If we do end up doing a Draganathon, we'll definitely talk to people about what color we should go for. Norfolk Inway, a dragon, go gold, John, with silver streaks. Then Donald Trump would have to be a fan of mine if I had a solid gold dome on my head. Anyway, we'll see, we'll see. Okay, Ray of Sunshine says they still think HIV is only for the gays, still clearly. That's probably a part of this. I think that you're 100% right. Raya Ral says, I still vote for John to go full mustache, shave the beard and leave the mustache. Why not both? Pink mustache. Oh my God, literally Occam's Taser messaged that as I said it. Anyway, okay, we'll see. Don't worry, if we do a Draganathon, you guys will be able to utterly ruin my appearance in many different ways. Okay, let's see. Sir Jenks, terrified buns of steel, says the sure was the tell. I think that was Donald Trump responding to Caitlin Collins' question about like, no, sure, I'll be looking into the conflicts of interest. Yeah, sure. Okay, let's see. Old Woodsman says Ronald Reagan's Star Wars initiative was just a deep money pit until it was finally scrapped. 100% feels very similar to that. Let's see. Native Dragon says, so are Thursdays now Johnny Solo Day now that Franny is gone? It has been. I mean, way back, Thursdays tended to be the most likely that I would be solo. It's really tough because I like doing solo shows. They're different and some people enjoy them. But we also have a lot of great people that we want to have on. You know, I want to have Yaz around. I want to have Jordan around. I want to have Jackson around. Like all the great people. So we're figuring out going forward what we want to do. There's benefits to different things. Mother of Kittens is a tier 2 member on YouTube. Thank you so much for that. Very nice of you. Robin Long became a member. Thank you to the new members. I appreciate it. Okay, let's see. Benjamin Morrill, member for 28 months. Thank you as always for being here. Ben says, hi John, thank you. We'll always sub. I'm worried about aspirations, the bank thing. Is there a good one at all? The earth on fire is why I ask. So I think that's a reference to aspiration. I'm not sure if there's recent reporting that Ben is referring to, so feel free to clarify that. I'm not sure if that's in reference to something specific. I've seen nothing bad about them. But if there is, feel free to let us know. I want to keep up to date. Jonah Morton says, member for 30 months, says Pentagon Games, EA style of microtransactions, well, Tesla style. Do we get the upgraded early alert service of just the 15-minute announcement? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, those, I'll say it on the other side. We had a reference in the social chat to this is going to be a subscription service, just like how Tesla. Yeah, you don't worry, your Tesla will be able to be fully autonomous. You'll just turn it on with a software fix or whatever. I've heard that before from Elon Musk. Yeah, no, the missiles will totally be able to fire. We just need to flip a switch and we need $10 billion more. Sure. I'm gonna read one super chat, then we're gonna jump back into the news. Let's see. Robert Ryder says with a very generous super chat, the billionaires will have doomsday weapons in space, then they can hold the world hostage. Wait, that would be the subscription. Yeah, they're already saying they're gonna hold the world hostage. That's baked into it at this point. Dr. Evil really should have thought about that. Actually, we have a comment about Dr. Evil. Robert Ryder says, Dr. Evil, you must pay me $1 billion per month. 100%. Do the kids get references to Dr. Evil, or is that too old now? I gotta watch recent movies. Anyway, okay, well, with that said, why don't we jump into other news? Oh, dear God, it's this. Buckle up, everybody.
It's appalling and sad that Senator Van Hollen and the Democrats applauding his trip to El Salvador today are incapable of having any shred of common sense or empathy for their own constituents and our citizens. Nobody knows this more than the woman standing to my right, Patty Morin, whose beautiful daughter Rachel was brutally maimed and murdered at the hands of an illegal alien in August of 2023. Patty no longer has her daughter because of the failed Democrat Party's open border, and these are policies that President Trump is bringing an end to. Nothing will change the fact that Abrego Garcia will never be a Maryland father. He will never live in the United States of America again. And the United States Supreme Court ruled unanimously that the President of the United States and the Secretary of State could not be compelled to forcibly retrieve this citizen of El Salvador, who is currently locked up in a maximum security prison in his home country due to his MS-13 membership.
So obviously there's a lot of lies there that I don't want to have to fact check every time, but no, they haven't demonstrated that he's a member of MS-13. He appears to be innocent of any crime. So the idea that he is languishing, best case scenario, alive in a maximum security prison for the rest of his life, deeply evil, deeply, deeply evil. But there's more evil on display there. Oh, also, by the way, the lie about the Supreme Court, it's the exact opposite of what they ruled. She knows that. It's a deeply Orwellian fascistic regime. Everybody knows what Trump is about at this point. So she referenced the mom that was on stage with her. That mom did actually experience something terrible. Patty Morin, her daughter, Rachel, was actually raped and murdered by an undocumented migrant back in 2023. He was found guilty of the killing this week through the normal due process. So the issue here is not that Patty Morin hasn't had a terrible experience, an unthinkable, unimaginable experience. I don't want anyone to have to experience something terrible like that. I have tons of empathy for her. I would wager that I have infinitely more empathy for her than Karoline Leavitt does, because I care about the experience her family went through. Karoline Leavitt is using her as a goddamn prop to make you not care about the evil that this administration is perpetuating. That's what they're doing. They said, oh, who can we bring on the stage? I mean, I know Garcia didn't commit any crimes and we really want to pretend that he's a murderer. So what if we find a different murderer and just talk about that? And then we just say, Garcia, this murder, Garcia, this murderer, and then get people who apparently are experiencing too much empathy and compassion and horror at the way that the Trump administration is shredding the Constitution. We got to stop them from doing that. So let's find a different murderer. And so Patty Morin is there. That's a choice that she's gonna make. She had a terrible experience. Maybe she doesn't know she's being used, or maybe she doesn't care and she thinks it's a good thing because it gets people to care about what happened to her. So I'm not gonna judge her at all, but I am gonna judge Karoline Leavitt and the Trump administration, who want to combine their lies about Garcia and other completely unaffiliated crimes to justify the end of due process, the end of the Constitution, the end of checks and balances, the effective end of the Supreme Court in this country because, hey, that guy killed someone in 2023. So shut up about the Constitution, shut up about due process. We don't care about that. Such massive differences between these two cases, and they're hoping that you don't realize it. Now, it isn't just Karoline Leavitt that's telling these massive lies, trying to get you to just quell that feeling of empathy, the value for democracy and due process that you might be feeling. It's inconvenient to fascism. Here we have Pam Bondi.
He is sitting in a prison, and every American should be thanking President Trump tonight, and every liberal journalist.
Occasionally, I chafe at the language restrictions that we have. Here, we're on a linear platform. It's the way that it works, because all I want to do right now is scream a 4-letter word loud enough to shatter every electronic device in the studio. Pam Bondi Go F yourself all the way to the ends of the universe and the end of time itself. She is the serious one. She's the responsible one. Oh, Matt Gaetz, he's an extremist. No, we got an actual lawyer and we got Pam Bondi. Screw Pam Bondi. She is as evil as every other one of these people, saying that the wife and that child he had with her, his kid. That's how you talk about a kid. You know how I know? Because I have a goddamn kid. His child, his kid, not that child he had with her. They're better off because this man who has not been shown to have committed a single crime might be dead in prison right now. So at the same time that Karoline Leavitt is bringing up a mom who lost her child and being like, just think of the families, think of the mothers, shut up about the Constitution, think of the mothers. Yeah, that mother, wife of Garcia, she should be thanking her lucky stars she'll never see her husband again. That kid should be kissing my feet because her father's probably dead at this point. I understand that not nearly as many people care about this story as I think should. I understand that every video, and we've put out a lot about them, nobody cares and nobody watches it. I don't care. I don't care. This is evil, plain and simple. We don't need a better word for it because the word evil exists. These people are utterly reprehensible. They deserve nothing but your disdain and your disgust and your tireless efforts to get them the hell out of power. Okay? Every one of us, I understand better than most how utterly demoralizing every day of this is. I'm tracking it every day. But please do not shy away from this because these people have to be taken out of power. Of power, I'm saying it. Don't lock me up in a hole in El Salvador because I said you should be taken out. We're on the left. We're not the violent ones, okay? We're not the ones trying to take out Donald Trump, but Jesus Christ. Meanwhile, El Salvador refused to meet one of the only Democrats doing the right thing in this. Senator Chris Van Hollen went. He tried to meet with them and they were like, no, you can't do that. It's a maximum security death camp. We're not letting you in there. They are letting other people in. This a-hole got in. Riley Moore got to pose in front of prisoners. So he's not even a senator. He's just in the House of Representatives. So he could go. Hey, follow-up question, can he meet Garcia? I'll even let him pose like a douchebag in front of him. You could do that. You could do all that deeply racist BS posing that you want to do, but do it in front of Garcia. So like, okay, some people are alive, technically, crammed into these cells. Can you not be Garcia? But look at that. Look, I want to thank Riley Moore. I want to thank Bukele. I want to thank Karoline Leavitt for making the contempt case that they're now facing that much easier for the judges and eventually justices. Because all they had to do was pretend to be trying to bring him back. And they decided, screw that, we're not gonna do that. So Karoline Leavitt says he's never gonna be back. Hard to argue you're trying your best to get him back when you say something like that. And Bukele refusing to even let them have a person there, like for a photo op or to see him, to confirm that he's alive. Obviously not participating. And now Riley Moore, he's there, shows no interest whatsoever in seeing Garcia. He just wants to do his little, hey, look at me, okay? Open up that cell for a second, okay? I'll take a look at the photos that'll come from that. I'm not interested in the thumbs up. Yeah, no, I get it. You look like a massive turd. I understand. I didn't need a montage of 4 photos to realize that you're a douchebag. One would have been more than enough. And so all of them are sort of making the case for us. Look, there's a lot more. There's more devastating updates on this. The only thing I want to add to this right now is Hunter Walker of Talking Points Memo put out, I think, a useful clarification. I think words matter. And I think I and other people have been referring to CCOT as a prison up until today. And I don't exactly know why I was doing that, because the word prison actually means something. It generally means that it's holding people who've been convicted of a crime. Okay, and also generally most of those people have sentences that will eventually end and then they'll be free. That's not true of CCOT. That's not true of CCOT at all. We already know that the vast majority of the people we've sent there are utterly innocent of any crime. And we also know that they're never getting out of there. Oh, well, not alive anyway. Yeah, maybe they'll be killed and they'll be taken out in a body bag or something. That's not a prison. It is something. It's a camp, maybe a concentration camp, maybe a death camp considering its record, but it's not a prison. You could say black site if you don't want to be provocative with death camp, but no, I'm gonna try to really keep to it. We're done with prison because that's not what it is. That's not what it is. In fact, in reality, and that's not what they want it to be. Karoline Leavitt and Pam Bondi and that douchebag and Donald Trump, they want to send innocent people to die there. That's what a death camp is for, and that's what they've got in this case. Okay, we're gonna take our second break a little bit early because I have an optimistic story coming and I don't wanna go straight into that from this. I wanna cleanse the palate a bit. We'll be back in a few. I didn't think that we'd go long on that topic today, but a little bit long. Okay, let's see. Ravaging Wolverine says, I think the Daily Show referred to Boeing planes as having self-crashing technology. That's the plane version. Some cars have that too. Let's see. By the way, I don't know if Bart is listening, but many years ago, Bart and I had a number of conversations, not arguments really, there were conversations about the appeal or likelihood that self-driving technology would end up working and would be a good thing. And while I disagree with Bart on most of his takes on movies, he was right back then about the technology. I was wrong. I was wrong over and over again. So Bart, you get the W for that one. Anyway, Gargoyle Dragon says in a super chat, why am I thinking that Trump had a I want frickin' sharks with lasers conversation? Dude literally watched spoof movie villains as role models. He definitely did, but I honestly think that Elon Musk is worse in that regard. Old Dion says in super chat, good job sticking with the language restrictions while covering anything about this infuriating regime. You're better man than me, LOL. I try not to, it just, look, we could fix it if I had a slip, but that just causes more work for our editors, and I like our editors, and I don't want to do that to them. So anyway, Borg Dragon says in super chat, what stops Russia or China from subscribing to our awesome missile system? Do we really think they won't? No, Elon Musk loves America. He wouldn't do that. Anyone got 5 million to buy Kilmar Garcia a gold citizenship card? Imagine the headlines. Could that work? Could we crowdfund the Trump card for Garcia? It obviously wouldn't happen, but I like that. I like that. 5 million is a lot. That's a lot of money. I don't know that we could necessarily do it, but is anyone already doing that? Because I don't want to do something if anybody's already doing it. But Borg Dragon, I like that. Borg Dragon, this is now seems ridiculous in light of what you're talking about, but Blueprint gift card for you. Send an email to rewards@tytnetwork.com. I want to think about that. Okay. I love our audience. I love our audience. They're so much better and smarter than me. Anyway, D Chad says, thanks for appetite for corruption. They're hungry. They're very hungry. They've got that dragon sickness. Bianca, the purple binky dragon Lopez says, John, just say go fork yourself. I know I could. Fork is right there and frack is right there, but it doesn't have the bite in these times that I want. Anyway, Apollo Racer says Trump would take the money but not give the card. No, we're not giving him the card unless, and by the way, if he doesn't get the card, then the money should go to the family. It should go to the mother and that child he had with her. God damn, these people are evil. Sick P44 has been with us for 18 months on Twitch. Thank you. Coffee Dragon loves books. Been here for 48 months, 4 full years. You know what? I love books. I think books are underrated. Let's get people to read more. Bobby Joe started a little mini raid. Appreciate it. Court for Jester's been here for 52 months. Says, sorry, we can't allow you to access your missiles until you subscribe to our platinum plan. Yeah, and everybody know, like, think about the uptime of Twitter over the past couple of years. I hope the missiles are online when Russia attacks. Anyway, Rainey in Portland, been here for 5 months, says everything about Republicans and MAGA do is about cruelty, hate, and greed, everything. Yet so many of them claim to be good Christians, 100%. Okay, we're gonna get back to more news. I now have that idea swirling around in the back of my head. It's gonna be very hard to focus on anything else. Damn me. Okay, let's jump into a little bit of positivity, starting with this.
This is a matter of fact. Donald Trump is a criminal. He was found guilty of 34 felony counts of fraud, found liable for sexual abuse. And if he wants to find the rapists and criminals in this country, he should look in the mirror.
I just love it. I just want, give me that every day. And thankfully they are, actually. I guess AOC and Bernie Sanders are kind of giving us that every day in their Fight Oligarchy tour across America, which if you have not already gone to, if they come to your area, just go. I can tell you, I was at the big LA one that she's gonna reference in a video we're gonna play. And it like for me at least, I can't speak for you, it's the inspiration that I need at this point. And the fight, taking it to Donald Trump, not pulling any punches in a time when we cannot afford to pull a single punch. And not just Trump, but those that are trying to cow the anti-oligarchy movement, which she references in this.
You know, I heard that someone started flying a plane with a banner that said, this is Trump country. It sure don't look like it today. I don't think this is Trump country. I think this is our country.
Oh yes, and I know, you know, she's giving a speech, she's doing a performance or whatever, but it really does feel like she's enjoying that, and I want her to. I want us to have some hope and some joy, and I want our fighters to have it too. The good activists on the ground, the journalists, and yes, the politicians as well. I want AOC to be enjoying this moment. I want this to propel her to whatever comes in the future. And yeah, it really did look more like our country than Trump country. She drew, well, her and Bernie Sanders, we gotta be fair, drew a 3-mile long line for the rally in, I believe that was the Folsom rally in California's Trump country. It was a red area. And they got like a significant percentage of the population of that area to come. And I think the reason that they're doing that in stop after stop, growing with each one, is that they're motivating Democrats. And not just motivating them with the message, but motivating them with what they're accomplishing, which you'll see in this clip.
On the way here, we got a very interesting piece of news, which is that some of those Republican House members that we had visited, they just led a letter warning the Republican leadership, saying, we don't know if we can vote for Medicaid cuts now. That's you, Missoula. That's you, Montana. That's you, Colorado. That's you, Arizona. That's you, California. That's you, the people. We got them on their back foot. We got them scared. We got them running. So we are here for the long haul, and we will not stop until they actually vote no. We're not going to let them trick us with gestures and strongly worded letters. I want to see the no vote on the floor. That's the only thing we will accept.
That right there is what I love, and that's why I had to play that video. It's the 1-2 punch, because she announces that they did the letter, which we talked about that on TDR yesterday. And then she goes into the, you did that Missoula, you did that California, and I'm liking that, and I'm revved up. But I have that like voice in the back of my head. Maybe you have that same voice. It's like, yeah, they did the letter, but like, what does that really mean? That's like literally what I said in the show yesterday. And then she hits that. Because she's not naive, she's not stupid. She's happy that they did the letter, but she also knows that that by itself is worth absolutely nothing. And she makes sure that the audience knows that and remembers that. And I couldn't love it more. They are having an effect. Donald Trump has had this big effect on the MAGA movement by scaring all these representatives and making them scared that they're going to lose their seats. That's the only thing that gets them to do one thing versus another. This is another way that you could potentially do that. Scare the hell out of them. It's one of the reasons that they're going to all of these red areas, not exclusively, but quite a few of them. And that can be frustrating for some people who live in the blue areas and want to see them. I have no doubt that they're going to do more of a tour. I see like people saying they want them on the East Coast. They apparently are going to continue to do this for some time. And I'm glad, not only because it gives more people either in our audience or just out there across America a chance to see the message, to get involved in this fight, but also because there is definitely an appetite for that. A survey taken by Harvard Center for American Political Studies and Harris, this is back about a week ago, found that 72% of Democratic voters supported politicians like Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez, quote, who are calling on Democrats to adopt a more aggressive stance towards Trump and his administration and, quote, fight harder, rather than leaders who are willing to, quote, compromise with President Donald Trump. And that is important. It's super clear, by the way. They're lapping the compromise people, but I want everybody to remember that, because when we start choosing Senate candidates for this next cycle, and definitely once the presidential primary starts coming around, you're gonna hear it from the establishment. It's time to go to the center. They want compromise. They want bipartisanship. No, they don't. They're being super clear that that's not what they want. That's all they're getting mostly from Democratic leadership, but that's not at all what they want. And they're not just showing up, they're putting their wallet where their mouth is. Ocasio-Cortez has raised nearly $10 million in the last 3 months, smashing her record. Her next election isn't for like a year and a half. This is like she's giving a speech and she's raising money like it's a week until the presidential election. It's not. That's just what they're doing now because the appetite is so there waiting for them. And look, I hope that they keep this going for literally months. I hope they grow it, make it even bigger. I hope that they bring in, as they've been doing, by the way, local candidates who are primarying Democrats. They're doing that. As they go to each area, they're boosting candidates in that area. This is not just about Bernie. It's not just about AOC, regardless of what they might do in future elections. It's about, once again, building that movement and trying to bring in good progressive candidates who are not beholden to the 1%, beholden to corporate donations and all of that. And that's what I want to see. There's other stuff that I want to see. Be interested in a couple things that she could potentially do politically in a few years, and we'll find out about that. But for now, I think this is incredibly valuable, and I love that it's drawing as much attention as it is, where you're having like Politico headlines of like, hey, it's raising questions about our political future and everything. Yeah, we've been trying to raise that topic for some time. I'm glad that some people are catching on. Anyway, with that said, let's turn from the good people to some people who apparently are never gonna learn a lesson. Let's jump into this. Oh, you can actually, oh yeah, that's true. Actually, I did not set it up to be okay. Let's jump into this. Good news, bad news for those who despise Donald Trump and his movement. More and more independents apparently agree with you on a wide range of issues, but the Trump voters, not so much. We'll get to them, but first I do want to lead with the good news, so let's jump into this.
Independents feel that Donald Trump has vacated the center of the electorate, catering to his base. What are we talking about? Well, let's talk about the overall net approval ratings. We're going to look at the worst ever at this point in a presidency. The old record among independents for the worst ever was Donald Trump back in 2016, a net approval rating of minus 16 points. Well, Donald Trump has broken his own record here. He now holds, in this particular term, the worst ever net approval rating at this point in a presidency among independents at, get this, minus 22 points. He is 22 points underwater with independents.
Well, that's pretty amazing. Donald Trump wants to break all these records, and he is actually doing it, and we have to give him the credit he deserves. Thank you, Harry Enton, for that. Yeah, he's not popular amongst independents, and why would he be? Remember, independents are talked about by most in the media as being like an ideology. And there might be a little bit of that. The word is used to describe very different sorts of people, but for a lot of people, it just means they're not that attached, really. They might be willing to give a try to Donald Trump. The Biden years were sort of tough. And so in the same way that they swung for Biden against Trump in 2020, we'll do the same thing in 2024. But they are paying attention, and they're seeing how terrible this is. They're not members of the MAGA movement by definition. They're not even like never Trump Republicans. They're willing to give him a try, and they're not liking what they're seeing. That's good news. And we have a little bit more good news specifically on the economy. Take a look.
A clear plan for tariffs and trade among independents. Look at this, 57% say no. He doesn't even have a clear plan for what he should be doing with tariffs and trade. And when asked whether or not they like the idea of additional tariffs, guess what percentage of independents say no, that they oppose it? It is 2/3. It is 66% of independents who oppose new tariffs. They don't like anything that's coming out of Donald Trump's right now, absent maybe immigration. But when it comes to the economy, when it comes to overall, when it comes to tariff, it's a threesome for negativity among independents. They oppose.
Trump is finally getting the threesome he's always hoped for, but it's not the one that he liked. And these are not only really bad numbers for him, they're really big turnarounds from him. I mean, you might expect it would be really difficult to take the positive approval he had amongst young voters, independents, people on the economy, and turn it into deficits like this. But it turns out it's actually super easy, barely an inconvenience. You just launch a stupid, boneheaded trade war that evaporates literally trillions of dollars from the stock market. And I want to be clear, we're not doing like a ton of like tariff stuff on a daily basis or whatever. The stock market is still down big from where it was at just a few weeks ago. Take a look at the last 6 months of the stock market, and it is just down, down, down. Now, it's not down to the apocalyptic level that it was, but it's still down. And independents, they're not gonna necessarily follow Donald Trump just because like, he's stupid and corrupt or whatever, but he sure hates those trans hockey players. No, they're looking at the economy and they're not liking what they're seeing, which is awesome. That's what I want to see. That's the good news. Let's turn now to the bad news, which is, the hope that a lot of MAGA people will turn against Donald Trump, the regretful Trump voter. Apparently not so much.
I hear all these stories, all these articles, all the Trump voters, they regret what they did back in 2024. I'm here to tell you, very few of them regret what they did back in 2024. What are we talking about? Trump voters looking back at 2024, we got a new poll out. The poll was conducted this month. What percentage would change their vote to a different candidate? We're talking just 2%, just 2%. That's not even a wide spot on the road. And then you ask, okay, the same question to Kamala Harris voters, and it turns out the numbers are rather similar. So if there was a repeat, if folks got to be able to redo their vote that they had back in 2024, would the result be any different? I doubt it would be. 4% of Trump voters say they'd shift their vote. That's actually slightly more than the 3% this time around.
We're the worst species. Why are we in charge? Put the dogs in charge. The penguins, they seem to be having a good time. We can't learn. Okay, some people can. Again, I don't want to forget the independent stuff that we just talked about is very positive. But man, those voters, no, look, we have to be fair. The fact that more regretted their decision the last time around might seem maddening because he's so much worse than he was the first time around. But bear in mind, the Trump voters who voted for him this last time, they're self-selected as they don't learn a lot of lessons, okay? They don't necessarily see things the way that we do. And so I don't even know what it counts for anymore. It is depressing though, the fact that he can come in and he's violating the Constitution and he's willingly crashing the economy. And for people to see that and to be like, no, I'd still go for this. That's difficult to swallow, okay? It's, as people are saying, it's a cult. It's not a political movement. It's a cult. It has all the hallmarks. Donald Trump has organized it to be that. It's not coincidentally a cult. It's intentionally a cult. But again, I want to end with a little bit of optimism, which is that it doesn't necessarily matter. Okay, we don't need them to flip over to win the midterms. We don't need them to flip over to win this next time around. We do need those independents. We do need the young voters, and those are the groups that have swung so much. So look, it would be great. It would make me have so much more faith in humanity if they were to learn a lesson, like literally one lesson. But again, it's not actually required. His overall favorability rating is massively underwater. That's the important thing. So take a little bit of optimism for this. I know that I will. Anyway, with that said, that's the end of our hour. We do have more to come in the aftermath. Lots of good stuff, interesting news. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Aftermath, one and all. A lot more news to get to, but I also want to read some comments. Quaker Lady with a super chat saying Republicans are cruel, Democrats have no backbone, so I'm a registered independent. Totally understand it. Gargoyle Dragon says, fun fact, Disney allows their park employees to swear by telling problem guests to have a Disney day. You and your team can be just as creative. I think I'm gonna say that actually. Pam Bondi, have a Disney day. Pam Bondi, go Disney yourself, please. Anyway, okay. R13 says in a super chat, damn, she is so damn good. We need more of that. I don't know if that's Karoline, Leavitt, or AOC. Probably AOC. But anyway, and we do. We need more people like that. CK Progressive says AOC will need to decide if she wants Chuck Schumer's Senate seat in 2028 or to go for the presidency. Which one gives her a better chance of winning? Look, we have no idea if she's ever going to run for any higher office. She does not seem, I'm not saying that she's not ambitious. She doesn't seem as overly driven by ambition as a lot of politicians. She does not give off the vibe of a person who just thinks day in and day out of becoming president. There are some other people, some of them well-liked, that do give me that vibe, but so she might not run for anything. If she did, I would like to see her run for president. That's something I've been interested in since, mid 2018. So we'll see. I don't know. Anyway, with that said, why don't we jump into our first story? I apologize that this aftermath is going to be a little bit serious, but we are living in serious times. Okay. The Trump administration apparently has a strange understanding of the meaning of the word harm, and thanks to that, the days of the bald eagle might be coming to an end. See, they want to redefine what it means to harm an endangered species in a way that could wipe them out. They have this proposed rule they put forward. It was issued on Wednesday from the US Fish and Wildlife Service and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration that would repeal a long-standing interpretation of what it means to harm imperiled plants and animals to exclude the destruction of habitat. So if that's not clear, okay, you would still get in trouble if you elbow dropped a mongoose or whatever. But if you wiped out the place the mongoose lives, well, who's to say that actually harms it? If you burn a forest down, if you dam a river, does that really harm the creature that used to live there and now can't? Who's to say? Not us. We got rid of all of the scientists, I guess. That's literally what they're doing, and it does really matter for those species. Habitat loss is the single biggest reason that many species face extinction. Environmental advocates said the changes would make it all but impossible to protect the forests, grasslands, rivers, and other habitats that threatened species rely upon to survive. And that should be clear. Yes, there are some species that have been overfished or hunted or whatever, but it's not like too many people were eating the gray wolves. That's not why they were going away. It's not that they suddenly got depressed about the role of the modern male in wolf culture. No, it was habitat loss. And so this is definitely going to put us on the fast track to get rid of a lot of those species. And the act has been very clear in the past about what needs to be done to protect them. The Endangered Species Act prohibits actions that, quote, harass, harm, pursue, hunt, shoot, wound, kill, trap, collect, or capture endangered plants and species. The word harm has long been interpreted to mean not just the direct killing of a species, but also severe harm to their environment. Building a dam, for example, might make it impossible for salmon in a river to survive, I think, for obvious reasons. And when I say it's been long interpreted to mean that, I don't mean by me. I don't mean by like Neil deGrasse Tyson. In 1995, the Supreme Court upheld that interpretation. This is decades ago, ruling against property owners who had claimed that while the law prohibited them from killing protected wildlife outright, it should not prevent activities like logging that would indirectly endanger plants and animals. They were super clear. Not that that matters anymore. Who the hell cares what the Supreme Court says any more than who the hell cares what the Constitution says? The Trump administration is not going to feel bound by that. And honestly, I don't even know that if the Supreme Court were to take up a challenge to this rule change, that they would respect the precedent. They certainly haven't in other cases, including Roe v. Wade. So we're kind of in a rock in a corrupt fascistic place here. So generally, this move is part of a plan by President Trump to increase drilling, logging, and development in the US and to eliminate regulations that slow the issuance of permits. But I just want to remind everyone, Trump, sure, he wants to like let businesses go wild, wreck the environment, kill animals, kill people, whatever, as long as it generates, an increase in the stock price. But he also pretends to care about symbols. He talks about how we need our cities to be more beautiful, but like not our forests, not our grasslands. Like, I know that he's had a checkered past with bald eagles. One almost killed him in his office once, but like people typically have liked that. It's a symbol of America. Shouldn't we protect them? Shouldn't we not wipe out the places that they live, imperil the air that they fly through? I don't know, that seems reasonable to me, but again, that change is coming. Now, there is like a 30-day period where people can submit public comments, and I'm sure that they will take those comments very seriously. But that is not the only thing that they're doing to harm our environment. Trump also announced he's gonna be exempting nearly 70 coal plants from a Biden-era rule on mercury and other toxic air pollution. And this is really bad, okay? It probably is clearly really bad, but you need to know that it's bad. This was a 2-year federal requirement to reduce emissions of toxic chemicals such as mercury, arsenic, and benzene, among other things, among the carbon emissions and all that too. And these are not tiny little minor plants. They're some of the biggest that exist. Among the plants receiving exemptions is the Colstrip Generating Station. This is a massive power plant in Colstrip, Montana, that emits more toxic air pollutants such as lead and arsenic than any other US facility of its kind in the entire country. And that's according to the EPA. Other plants with exceptions include Coal Creek Station. That's a large power plant in North Dakota that is among the nation's top producers of mercury emissions, and the Oak Grove plant in Texas, another massive polluter. And so all of this is really bad. All of this is just trying to help coal sort of stay cost competitive as long as possible as alternative and far healthier, far cleaner, renewable forms of power generation become much more cost efficient. They're putting their thumb on the scale. This is not capitalism. This is direct federal government intervention to try to help companies to stay competitive. And not only by not having to comply with these regulations, but people already die thanks to the pollutants they put out. They don't have to pay for that. We are already subsidizing them. Your family, when they develop asthma, when they develop respiratory infections, and whatever the hell other things ingesting airborne lead and mercury and arsenic can do to you, which I imagine is bad, you are directly subsidizing these coal plants. And they don't even give you a thank you for that. The Trump administration certainly isn't. And so again, we made this joke earlier in the show, but they're doing all of this, flooding the air with mercury and other toxins, lead, and then telling you that they want to make America healthy again. So on the one hand, they let the coal plants poison the air, but on the other hand, Joe Rogan does seem to like them, and he's a bro, he cares about health and everything. So like, I feel like that's not even exactly. And again, where is RFK Jr.? Again, wasn't he supposed to be, oh my God, they're bringing RFK Jr. This is a dramatic change for the administration. They're gonna take health seriously, chronic illness. You know how many chronic illnesses are being caused by these pollutants? Right as we speak, he's going around the country saying that there's environmental causes of autism. Like, at least maintain your cover story. Get the benzene and the arsenic out of the air. I'm not even saying that it does cause it, because I don't think that it does. But that's the sort of thing he'd pretend would. And they're flooding the air with more and more of it. That's what they're doing. Okay, we're gonna move on to another story in just a sec. Mechanical Philosopher, thank you for being a member. I do appreciate that. Reminder, again, 30 minutes after the close of the Aftermath, we're gonna be doing our Tier 3 members hangout. I hope to see many of you there. We're gonna have a lot of fun. And with that, why don't we jump into other news? Trump is only increasing his attacks against Harvard because they have refused, surprisingly, to bow down to his idiotic and fascistic demands to control what they teach, how they teach it, what words they use, what identities they allow to be expressed. This is right-wing cancel culture at its most toxic. And as of now, at least, they are standing strong. But the pressure that the Trump administration is putting on them is actually pretty significant. He is now saying that the IRS should, and they are going to try to rescind the tax exempt status of Harvard University. This is a massive, unparalleled change. And that's what they're doing. At risk is nearly $500 million in tax benefits that the oldest university in America currently enjoys. So already he canceled the $2.2 billion in federal funds, now another $500 million. All of this because he just can't take the fact that they're not executing trans students in the quad or whatever. Earlier this month, he issued a list of demands to Harvard, including calling for it to end its DEI programs, ban masks at protests, Presumably KKK protests and neo-Nazi protests can still have masks, but not if it's to stop the spread of disease. Expel students involved in pro-Palestinian protests and commit to full cooperation with the Department of Homeland Security. We're gonna get to the tax exempt status thing, but I wanna remind you, it's not expel students that firebomb a Jewish dorm or whatever. If you participate in protests that advocate for the lives of people the Trump administration doesn't care about, they want you to be fully canceled. I'm not saying canceled like a person called you a racist on Twitter. I mean, your Harvard career is done. You might not be able to get into any university. The entire trajectory of your life is altered forever because you held a politically incorrect position. There has never been, and I pray there never will be, a cancel culture as thorough and toxic and authoritarian as that we're seeing right now out of the Trump administration. And they're willing to shift billions of dollars in funding to make sure they get the cancel culture that they want. So again, let's now jump into the tax exempt thing. Gary Shapley was picked this week by Trump to be the acting IRS commissioner. He has the authority to rescind the tax exemption under federal law. Doing so typically comes after the agency has made a determination that an organization has violated the rules that govern tax exemptions for not-for-profit entities. So such revocation of tax exempt status usually requires a high bar, such as in the 1980s when the IRS pulled the same status from a Christian college, quote, that the IRS determined had used a racially discriminatory admissions policy. I believe that was under Reagan at that point. That was a clear willful violation of federal law. They just don't like what Harvard is doing. They want them to get rid of more students. They want to effectively eliminate all foreign students. And if you don't do that, even though you're not violating the law, we want to try to shut you down if we can. Now, I don't think they'll be able to, but they're trying in every way that they can. And I just want to remind everyone of something that I at least am old enough to remember. I know a lot of you have only started following American politics in the last few years, but it wasn't that many years ago when the right, for like a solid 2-year period, was incensed at the idea that the IRS was targeting conservatives. They had meetings of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, Darrell Issa chairing them, how politics led the IRS to target conservative tax exempt applicants for their political beliefs. Oh my God, the cancel culture of Obama. It was going after these conservative organizations. Now, importantly, that wasn't remotely true. They did the exact same thing to progressive organizations. There was no evidence that they were systemically going after conservative organizations or that they were punishing organizations for their viewpoint. There were just a lot of organizations that didn't get the tax exempt status that they wanted, but that was enough to fuel a years-long narrative. Where are they now? Where is Darrell Issa? Where's Sean Hannity? Where's Bill O'Reilly? All the people that were doing monologue after monologue, night after night, about how the IRS was getting political. What exactly is this supposed to be? There's no cover story, by the way. This is just, we want the IRS to be used as a weapon to enforce viewpoint compliance by this organization. They have a tax exempt status. We don't want them to unless they only say the things we like, allow students to organize in the way that we like. That's it. If you don't do everything that is politically correct the way we define it, you should lose this tax exempt status. It generated endless content for Fox News under Obama. Not a peep. Or if there is, it's applauding the fact that they're doing this, applauding that the IRS is being weaponized in the exact same way that the DOJ is being weaponized. The only difference, I suppose, is there's a bit of cancel culture in the DOJ, but mostly it's just they're being used as foot soldiers for fascism. In this case, it's just an identity politics-based culture war, cancel culture. That's all it is. Death to free speech, death to free expression. I don't know why you'd be surprised by this. Anybody who thinks that the Trump administration or the MAGA movement cares about free speech, you need to start listening to new podcasts or whatever because you've been hoodwinked. But this is the proof. Wake the hell up. Anyway, we could go into more stuff about Kristi Noem saying that Harvard is being anti-Semitic or whatever with the way that they're. I don't want to get into that. I think that we're fine on this. Let me thank Beast Boar, member for 38 months, says, I really don't think he's alive. That's why they don't want to update us or do anything. I really hope I'm wrong. I really hope so too. But I just want you to be prepared, everybody, not just for when and if it's announced that he is dead. I want you to prepare yourself for what they're gonna say. What Pam Bondi and Karoline Leavitt and Jesse Waters and Sean Hannity and Lori Ingraham are gonna say. They are going to delight in the fact that a guy they know was innocent was murdered. And they're gonna shove it in your face. And it's gonna be grotesque. And we'll have each other during it, but it's gonna be gross and they're gonna be doing it. Okay, with that said, in one moment, we're gonna move on to one last story. Rubik's Realtor Dragon says, F yes, it's on. That's got early Obama vibes. I don't know if it's a reference to the Harvard thing, but maybe. Didali says, pink was considered a very masculine color back in the royalty eras. It is a variation of royal red colors. Yeah, exactly. Blue and pink, it was swapped gender-wise before, but again, nobody's supposed to know about any history older than a couple of years ago. I would do it just to annoy them, honestly. I've often thought about wearing a dress on the show just to bother them. Maybe I'll do that at some point. Anyway, and somebody's saying early Obama vibes, maybe like a rational equivalent to the Tea Party is what you're talking about there, maybe? Not 100% sure, but perhaps. Anyway, with that said, we need to talk about one more thing, so let's jump into it. Bill Burr is back to deliver a much needed history lesson on capitalism when discussing the status of American labor. Let's take a look.
This whole idea that other countries stole our jobs, like our factory jobs and all that, as far as I remember, that's not the case. Here's a little quick history from someone who doesn't read a lot. In the 1800s, during the, what was that period called? The Industrial Revolution. They had like kids working in factories, like 12, 14-hour days, like 4 or 5-year-old kids in dangerous situations. And people weren't making any money. And the one guy who owned the factory was keeping all the money. The working man finally has enough. They start organizing unions. The robber barons hire police, the army, all of these people to come in and kill these people in riots, crack their skulls, do unbelievable sorts of damage to them to try and force them to go back to work for sweatshop wages. These people died, were maimed, catastrophic injuries so that we could have a decent wage in this country. And they had unions and all of that. So then there was like a 40, 50-year period where being a middle-class person, middle-class white person, was the dream.
Yeah, so that's all accurate, by the way. I know that he started off like self-deprecatingly saying like he doesn't read a lot of books, but clearly he knows the history better than the vast majority of the people in the cabinet right now. And what he's expressing there is a dark past that we should be so glad that we are no longer in. And we should thank those individuals and organizations in the labor movement, the activists, who not only put their lives on the line, but many of them lost their lives to fix all of the nasty stuff that he was just describing there. And more importantly, we should make sure that we never go back to it. But unfortunately, we have a political movement in charge right now that wants to get us back to that and is trying at the federal and state level to do that. They want your kids to be working in these plants. They want the safety regulations that would protect them in the event they become child workers from being killed. They want to get rid of those. They're working every day to make that happen. And the reason that I like this and the reason that we go back to Bill Burr is he communicates directly, simply, probably more effectively than I can. But what I think he's demonstrating there is we have these two conceptions in this country of what it means to be a man. You have like the Donald Trumps or whatever that would tell you, you have to lay down and let those corporate overlords take everything from you, enslave your family, steal their wealth, maybe bash their skulls in. That's what it means to be a man, because it's patriotic to let the CEOs do whatever the hell they want. And there are so many on the right, including those whose entire brand is being an alpha and being masculine, that say the exact same goddamn thing. I subscribe to a different sort of masculinity. I think Bill Burr demonstrates that it is masculine to fight back against those efforts, those who would try to take advantage of your family, they would try to take advantage of your wives and your children, and not just fight back against it when it's here, but it is deeply masculine to know about and care about that history. There is nothing about masculinity that says you have to be ignorant, you have to be willfully stupid, moronic. I know that a lot of the avatars of it in this modern era are, but this is a demonstration that it doesn't have to be that way. There's a more intelligent and stronger and more aggressive masculinity that does not shy away from reality, but faces it head on and makes sure that tomorrow is better than today, certainly better than yesterday. And I think he's demonstrating how to do that. Now we're gonna give you just a little bit more of what he had to say with the little time we have remaining.
Eventually, these corporations just got sick of dealing with these unions and their hard-nosed negotiating and all that. And then they just said, well, fuck you then. Keep your union, keep your factory. We're leaving. And they took their factories outside of the US and went back to 1800 wages. What the fuck? You should be making those things here. And then what the corporate guy said was, well, we would make sneakers here, but if to pay the American worker and everything, the sneakers would then, instead of costing $50, they'd now cost $700. And I was always thinking, why? It would cost $700. I can't afford that. And what it really was they weren't going to lose the profit of sweatshop labor. So if they came back to America, we weren't going to work for that. So, and they weren't going to lose the profit of sweatshop labor, so they were going to pass it on to the consumer.
Again, all of that accurate, all that is important, and you can listen to him break down more of it. People need to know that history. It's a reminder that the billionaires are not your friends. The CEOs are not your friends. There is a war that has been going on since before we were a country, and it's between the workers and those who want to take their wealth. Those who want to take their wealth have a lot of representation in government. They have the entire Republican Party. They have literally one of their own in Donald Trump, trying to give them as much power as possible. They have the vast majority of the Democratic Party. We have this minor upstart movement that, by the grace of God, by some miracle, hopefully will win next time. They're out there rallying right now, AOC and Bernie Sanders, and there's people, many of them leftists, but not all of them. There are some independents and there are some right wingers that don't want to just bow down to the corporate overlords for the rest of time, and they're trying to fight back. And I'm glad that we have regular people, we have activists, we have the politicians, and we have some people in pop culture, in comedy, who actually get it and are trying to get people to wake up. I have a lot more that I wish I said. Unfortunately, we're way over. We don't have time. I'm sorry. But I want to thank everyone for joining me here. We do have our Tier 3 members hangout, which is going to start in 34 minutes. I hope to see as many of you as possible there. Brett Ehrlich is going to be joining us tomorrow. Go vote on the post tab, I think it's called, on YouTube now, for both the garbage person of the week as well as the hero of the week. And we were going to get to the woman who went on a bunch of dates with right wingers and reported back on her experience today. We didn't get to it, so I'm going to give Brett a chance to joke around about that tomorrow. So it should be a lot of fun. For now, stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and we'll see you soon.